And Donick 1025 The Game. Adam Vingan, Parker Kelly, Brandon Bigsby here with you on Monday. I hope you are all having as wonderful of a Monday as you can possibly have under the circumstances. Just a terrible storm that came through our region over the weekend. I hope everybody is doing well. Parker, how are you?
Adam, I am doing all right. I think we're surviving. We have power and we have Wi Fi. I know it could be much worse. I wish the circumstances were a little different. I wish I was with you in person. But hey, we're here. We got a lot of ball to talk about.
Indeed, we do. Brandon, how are you?
Doing all right. Pretty good. A lot of ball to talk about. Trying to stay warm, but
Yes.
that game last night I think is warming me up a good bit, man. Because gosh, that was awesome between Seattle and LA. Easily one of the games of the year for me.
That was a hell of a game, which we will discuss. We'll also discuss, the AFC Championship game. The Patriots headed back to the Super Bowl to take on the Seattle Seahawks in a couple of weeks. Willie Donick may or may not join us at some point during the program. He is traveling with the Predators. I saw a text on the text line from Mike in Lebanon earlier today during the Chase and Big Joe show, asking if there was any news on the Predators traveling. Yes, they have departed Nashville. They are en route to Boston, Massachusetts, where they will take on the Bruins tomorrow to kick off a 3-game road trip. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 1025 The Game. So Willie, once he settles in Boston, may join us. That would be great. Willie has been without power for most of the weekend. Derek Mason has been without power since early yesterday morning, and he is unable to leave his home because the roads are impassable in his neighborhood because of ice and sagging power lines. So Derek, unfortunately, unable to join us today. Hopefully, he is staying warm, and I hope you all are staying warm as well. And that's just how I want to start the show. 615-737-1025. Let us know how you're doing, okay? Because, look, we are not equipped for whatever the hell just passed through our region over the weekend. So much ice, so much ice. The snow started on Saturday. It was nice. My son went outside. He made snow angels. And then the freezing rain came in. And then we all had to go inside. And it's just, the ice is just terrible. Fortunately, today it's sunny outside. It's starting to melt. Of course, it will refreeze overnight because it's supposed to be freezing cold. Be neighborly. That was my word of advice on Friday. Be neighborly. Check on your neighbors. Make sure they're doing okay. Lend a helping hand if you can, because we're all in this together. Let's start with you, Parker. Just how was your weekend? How are you and your family holding up?
We're holding up fine. My parents actually lost power for a little bit. However, they were fortunate it came on fairly quickly. My wife and I over in our apartment actually never lost power, but the streets over here in Mount Juliet are terrible. So that's why we haven't been able to go anywhere over the last 3 days. So filled the time watching a lot of TV shows, movies, sports. It could always be worse. But I'm hoping to get out of here tomorrow and be back in studio.
Brandon, how are things by where you live?
In West Nashville, roads are manageable, but the biggest issue is no power throughout most of the areas. A lot of trees down and things of that nature. So that's been a little bit tough. No power, no heat. But you know what? We're just making the best of it, man. That's all we can do is just make the best of the situation we're given. And obviously, there's a lot of people out there working hard and diligently to try to get things fixed for everyone. So just try to make the best of the situation, man. That's all you can really do.
Agreed. And thank you to everybody who is helping us dig out of all of this ice and restoring power. Last I checked at Nashville Electric Service, the number of power outages has decreased significantly. But as I look at it, still 163,443 customers without power in Middle Tennessee. So for those of you who do not have power, stay warm, reach out to your loved ones, make sure that you're taken care of. And also call us, text us, 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll continue to provide you updates about the weather, about power outages, everything like that. I live on the east side of town, knock on wood, that's me knocking on this desk very, very loudly. We did not lose power. I'm not sure how we didn't lose power. I ventured out today for the first time. Obviously, I'm here, but I did venture out earlier today, and there were some sagging, broken tree branches on power lines. I don't know how we didn't lose power. Hopefully, it will stay that way. And trust me, I was nervous as hell about potentially losing power with a 4-year-old. I tried to pre-warn him. I tried to warn him. I'm like, all right, buddy, this is what happens if the power goes out. Here's what we're going to be able to do. Here's what we're not going to be able to do. And he kept on asking throughout the day, has the power gone out yet? Has the power gone out yet? And I said, it hasn't gone out yet, buddy. I'm just preparing you. Fortunately, it did not go out yesterday. It hasn't been out today. So we are very, very lucky. But once again, just let us know how you're doing. We love all of our listeners, 615-737-1025. But it is a Reaction Monday, and Reaction Mondays are brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. And actually, before we start that, I just want to give a couple of shout outs. One to Parker Kelly. He's pulling double duty today. He co-hosted Next Man Up with Jake Lyman from 9 to noon. This is also the first time that Parker and I have hosted a show together. So I am checking off yet another name. I have hosted a show with basically every personality on the station. Robbie, Joe, Big Joe, Chase, Willie, Derek, Tehran, Connor, Frazier. I've done it all. So I'm glad that I can include Parker Kelly on that list. I also want to give a shout out to David James, our regular producer who isn't here right now because he worked for basically 2 days in a row. He lived at the station over the weekend, making sure that we stayed on the air, that you all had the important updates. So big shout out to David James, who is getting some well-deserved rest. But let us begin by discussing the dreaded X. Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots heading back to the Super Bowl. The Patriots win 10-7 against the Denver Broncos in the AFC title game. A game where the weather just got worse and worse and worse. It was an ugly, sloppy game, probably played right into Mike Vrabel's hands, Parker. And we're going to talk about, I'm sure, the complicated feelings that Titans fans have about the fact that Mike Vrabel is going to the Super Bowl just a few years after being fired by the Tennessee Titans. But as the weather conditions worsened, Parker, in Denver, as I was watching the game yesterday, my first thought was, man, this is perfect for Mike Vrabel.
Perfect. And it's honestly incredible how quickly the snow fell in Denver, because if you think about the start of the game, even the second quarter, how it was sunny, 27 degrees, boom, third quarter hits, and suddenly you can't see the yard markers on the field because of the snow. And when that happened and the score was 10-7, I thought to myself pretty early on, another point may not be scored in this game. And turns out I was right. That plays perfectly, as you know, into the hands of Mike Vrabel. Just do whatever you have to do, no matter how gross, no matter, what you have to do to find the margins to win the football game. That plays perfectly into Mike Vrabel's persona. And look at there. They're in the Super Bowl.
The biggest talking point coming out of the game yesterday, the AFC title game, that is Sean Payton's decision not to kick a field goal with the Broncos up 7-0 in the second quarter, 4th and 1 from the Patriots' 14-yard line. He decided to go for it. The play blew up immediately. And considering how close the game was, other chances that the Broncos had to tie the game, missed field goals, of course, the fact that Jarrett Stidham was starting at quarterback, Sean Payton is going to, I think, rue that decision. Normally, going for it in that situation is the right thing to do. And Parker Kelly, who is a football savant, much more than I am, will tell me if I'm wrong here. Under normal circumstances, going for it when the Broncos went for it makes sense. Not when you know what the weather is going to be. Or the other question is, did Sean Payton know what the weather was going to be? If he knew that the conditions were going to worsen over the course of the game, maybe he would have reconsidered his decision to kick that field goal. But with the Broncos losing 10-7, that decision is going to haunt Sean Payton, Parker, all offseason long.
Adam, I have a huge problem, a huge bone to pick rather, with the analytics people because in
Okay.
that situation on 4th and 1, typically the analytics tell you to go for it. Typically. But in that situation, you have a backup quarterback that hasn't started a game in 2 years and it's 4th and 1. You already have the 7-0 lead. It's pretty clear. There's this thing called football intuition or a feel rather, and coaches like Sean Payton typically had that. Sean Payton has been in that position before. With a backup quarterback, again, hasn't started a game in 2 years, take the points. Because think about it. What ended up being the final score? 10-7. You kicked the field goal right there, and that was before the wind really started kicking. It's 10-10, and you probably send that game to overtime. So I know hindsight's always 2020, and you can look back on that and point at that moment in that game and say, man, the Broncos really screwed up right there. But that's kind of my whole debate. You got to have that football intuition and analytics be a sidekick to that.
What's interesting, Parker, is this morning on ESPN.com, Seth Wickersham published a story. I guess he embedded with the Broncos during their playoff preparation and playoff run, as short as it was. And the story leads off with Wickersham sitting in Sean Payton's office as Payton is preparing for the AFC Championship game. And as he's doing that, he has the Rams-Bears game from the divisional round on in the background. So this was last week. And here I'm just going to read from Wickersham's story. Quote, on 4th and 2 from the Rams 21, they, being the Bears, elected to skip a gimme field goal and go for it. The exact type of call that has dominated playoff professional and college football this season and can end up winning a tight game or be one of the main reasons for a loss. Payton saw the Bears line up on offense and he squinted. Kick it, he said. On the play, Caleb Williams was intercepted, costing Chicago 3 points, the difference in the final score. From Payton, quote, why are coaches not kicking field goals, Payton said, turning back to game preparation. He clearly, Parker, according to Seth Wickersham, did not take his own advice.
I can tell you right now, you know where Ben Johnson gets that from. The fact that he goes for it on 4th down, he gets that from Dan Campbell. That's where he came from, in Detroit. With Sean Payton, I don't doubt I think he's a fantastic football coach. And I know for certain he knows what he's doing when it comes to working with quarterbacks, developing quarterbacks. I'm still just blindsided by the fact that he didn't know better because you don't have to be a football savant to know. In that situation with Jarrett Stidham, you have to play a little bit more conservatively, considering what the weather forecast is going to be like later on in the game, considering who you're going up against, considering how good your defense has been all season. That's a spot where you don't risk it. And especially, I didn't like the play call either because you could see that the Patriots were bringing a blitz, and yet they decided to muddy it up and throw it right there. So I didn't agree with the call. I didn't agree with the decision to go for it, and I'm shocked Sean Payton didn't know better.
Caleb on our text line says you can use the weather in the opposite argument and say that if they go up 14-0, they pretty much secure the win. And I hear what you're saying, Parker, as someone who is a big believer in analytics. I know the blind spots that analytics have. And one of those blind spots is it doesn't take into context other parts of the environment. Oftentimes, it's just looking at the down and distance, the time in the game, the score, all of those things. It does not take into account the weather conditions, the fact that the Broncos are starting a backup quarterback who had not thrown a pass attempt in an actual NFL game in 2 years. So if Bo Nix is under center in that situation, it makes more sense to go for it. But when you consider the weather, the fact that it's Jarrett Stidham under center, I have a soft spot for Sean Payton. I am a Saints fan. He did win the Super Bowl as coach of the Saints, but I saw that yesterday and I was just like, man, I'm not sure about that one. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, and again, if I'm looking for, and I know that's never really the case in football games because it is a team sport. There are 11 people on the field. It's never in particularly one person's fault. But if I had to pick a scapegoat, I'm not putting that loss on Jarrett Stidham. I actually thought he did what he needed to do in order for the Broncos to win. And I remember saying before the game even played out, the more low scoring it is, I think that benefits the Broncos just because they don't have Bo Nix. And the higher scoring it is, obviously that favors the Patriots. So the defense played how they needed to play. I thought Jarrett Stidham played how he needed to play outside of, the fumble. And I think the interception towards the end was you just got to throw it there in that situation. But the fumble, yeah, you'd like to have that one back. But also, too, I can look at the play call again and think, man, like Sean Payton was just kind of off of it yesterday. And I'm in agreement with you. This is no slight to Sean Payton because what he's been able to do with Bo Nix and how he's been able to develop quarterbacks, I think he's a top 10 coach in the sport. But I was just so blindsided by the fact that his play calling was off, and it just didn't seem like he had that situational feel yesterday that he normally has.
Drake May hasn't had a spectacular postseason so far for the New England Patriots, but the one thing that he was able to do yesterday, and Willie, Derek, and I have talked a lot about this, Parker, in the context of Cam Ward. The one thing that Drake May was really able to do yesterday was be effective on the ground. He had 65 rushing yards yesterday, including, according to the NFL, a career high 6 first downs on the ground. That was huge yesterday, considering the weather conditions. Willie, Derek, and I are hoping that Cam Ward can develop into more of a scrambler. But as I was watching Drake May in the game yesterday, that's the one thing that stood out to me because he hasn't been incredibly accurate. He's been taking a lot of sacks this postseason, but he was so effective on the ground yesterday. That is such a key weapon for him in the Patriots.
Yeah. And if you think about what the Patriots have done on offense as a whole throughout this playoff run, they've averaged 18 points per game through 3 games, which is the lowest by any team to ever make the Super Bowl. So they haven't been spectacular by any means. And you look at Drake May's turnovers that he had versus the Texans last week in Foxborough. I don't think the weather actually had as much to do with it as you might initially realize, because if you go back and watch, the Texans have 2 star pass rushers and Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. They just beat Will Campbell, and they were able to get to Drake May and jar the ball loose. So the Denver Broncos have that same capability, except they have more elite pass rushers than the Texans have. At least I believe so. So the Patriots haven't been great on offense by any means, but again, that plays into Mike Vrabel because Drake May utilized his legs, realized that he probably couldn't throw as effectively, and they squeak out the win in Denver, which, by the way, Tom Brady wasn't able to win in Denver to advance to a Super Bowl, and Drake May has. So that's a feather in his cap.
615-737-1025. Again, our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll take your reaction to the AFC Championship game. Patriots 10, Broncos 7 in Denver yesterday. 615-737-1025. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us at 3:40 for his weekly segment. I also do have a giveaway today, so be listening for that. I have a pair of tickets to the Nashville Hoop Showdown featuring Ohio State and Virginia on Saturday, February 14th at Bridgestone Arena. So if you'd like a pair of tickets to see Ohio State take on Virginia in men's basketball in a couple of weeks at Bridgestone Arena, we will have your tickets for you. Be listening for the cue to call. Once again, that number, 615-737-1025. We'll continue the conversation coming up next. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick 1025. The Game, Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, Brandon Bigsby here with you today. Willie Donick traveling with the Predators. Derek Mason stuck at home. I do feel bad for Derek Mason, and I feel bad for a lot of you out there who are still without power. The roads are treacherous. You're trying to stay warm. You're trying to stay plugged in. We feel for you. If you need to vent, you call us 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We are here for you. We will provide any updates we have about the weather, about the power situation. We will be there for you every step of the way. So, of course, we were just talking about the AFC Championship game, Patriots 10, Broncos 7, which means, of course, that Mike Vrabel is headed to the Super Bowl just a couple of years after the Tennessee Titans fired him. And Parker, I've seen all the memes going around on social media. My favorite one is this. Mike Vrabel has as many wins in about a month than the Titans have in their past 2 seasons combined since firing him. Patriots 6 wins since December 21st. Titans 6 wins since firing Mike Vrabel. And there's a picture of a Titans fan with a with a paper bag over their head. So that's that. Like right now, a lot of people are dunking on the Tennessee Titans. And I can understand why people are dunking on the Tennessee Titans, because from afar, it looks like a ridiculous decision that the Titans fired Mike Vrabel. But we talked about this on Friday, Parker, and I would love your perspective on this. I don't remember a lot of Titans fans being up in arms about the team firing Mike Vrabel a few years ago. I'm not saying nobody was upset, but my recollection of it was it felt like it had reached a natural conclusion. The team was struggling. It was entering a different phase. Mike Vrabel didn't appear like he was going to be a part of those plans. There was the infamous comment in New England when he went back to be inducted into the Hall of Fame or whatever it was in New England. But I don't remember a lot of people freaking out, for lack of a better term, about the Titans firing Mike Vrabel when it happened. So I would love your perspective on Vrabel's arrival into the Super Bowl and everything it means for the Titans.
Well, it's just a bunch of Titans fans playing revisionist history. That's all it is. Because if you take yourself back a couple of years, and this team started 7-3, and then they lost their final 7 games of the regular season, and then Vrabel's final year in Tennessee went 6-11. Things weren't exactly great. Now, I'd like to clarify. I'd like to get out in front of this. Nobody's defending the front office, because we're certainly not going to do that, because they have their own issues. But with Mike Vrabel, I feel like because he wasn't given the roster control that he's getting right now in New England, he kind of had a shorter leash, for lack of a better term, here. So it's so easy to say, well, the Titans shouldn't have fired Mike Vrabel. Well, maybe, but it's like you said too, it reached a point where it was just better for both sides to part ways. And now we see the success that Vrabel is having with New England. And Adam too, like, you watch what Mike Vrabel's doing with the Patriots, and you can tell some things are different than what he did here. He revamped that entire roster, it seemed like, in one offseason, and they have an ascending quarterback. When Mike Vrabel was here, his last year, they had Will Levis. That's a very different quarterback from Drake May. So it's so easy for everybody to play revisionist history. I get it. I hate that things are this way, but it's just where we are.
The one takeaway I took from the Patriots winning and going back to the Super Bowl is it showed us what it means to hire the right coach. And the Titans have hired Robert Saleh. By the way, his news conference, his introductory news conference, which was scheduled for Wednesday, has now been pushed to Thursday, I presume, because of the weather. So we will not hear from Robert Saleh until Thursday now instead of Wednesday. And look, the Titans hope that Robert Saleh can have the same impact that Mike Vrabel has had in New England, or Ben Johnson had in his first season in Chicago, or Liam Cohen had in his first season in Jacksonville. And you can think you're bringing in a skilled coordinator and that coordinator doesn't turn out to be a great head coach. There are teams who are going to be bringing in experienced coaches and have no idea what those coaches are going to do with their second or third chance. Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh, for example. But the Patriots nailed this one with Mike Vrabel. And to your point, Parker, the Patriots did an outstanding job in free agency. They had an ascending quarterback in Drake May. So there was already a lot. There was the foundation was there for Vrabel when he took the job in New England. He helped build that team up to where it is now. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but including the postseason, the Patriots have now won 16 of their past 17 games because they started 1-2. They ended the season 14-3, and they're 3-0 in the playoffs. So if my math is right, which not always the case, the Patriots are 16-1 in their past 17 games, which is just remarkable. I saw Parker on the broadcast yesterday that the Patriots are the first team to reach the Super Bowl after having 13 or more losses in the previous season. That's remarkable. And could a different coach have done the same with the Patriots as Mike Vrabel has done? I'm not sure. I think it was a perfect marriage of a player beloved by that organization, a coach jonesing for a second opportunity with a big chip on his shoulder. And we know Mike Vrabel, he's got a little FU in him. Whether he's never going to admit it, but he certainly had to think about that over the course of the season. It just felt like everything, it's as perfect as you could possibly find in a situation between a first-year head coach and a franchise. So I'm not sure how replicable this is, but the Patriots look like geniuses for hiring Mike Vrabel right now.
And to add another stat to that, Mike Vrabel could become the first coach and player with the same organization to win a Super Bowl. So that would be incredible. But I'll tell you what this means for a lot of other coaches in the NFL. If you look at what Mike Vrabel's been able to do with the Patriots, if you look what Liam Cohen did with the Jaguars, if you look what Ben Johnson did in Chicago, they're going to get a lot of coaches fired. Because if they can turn around teams that were picking in the top 10 last year and get them to the playoffs and even make some runs, and in Vrabel's case, getting to the Super Bowl in year one, a lot of other owners and general managers are going to be expecting that as well. But it's about getting the right person in the building. Vrabel's players love him, love playing for him. You see him, fist bumping, head butting, hugging everybody in the tunnel. They love him. So it's about getting the right person in the building. They gave him roster control. They revamped the entire team basically in 1 year, and look where it has him.
Andrew on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com, says, here's another stat to quiet the crowd who loves this silly hindsight narrative. Mike Vrabel already has 3 postseason wins in 1 season with New England. In 6 seasons with the Titans, he had 2 postseason wins. Vrabel is culpable too. This is a nuanced discussion, and people should try and understand all sides. What do you make of Andrew's text there, Parker?
Yeah, no, I think it's really all about context too. Just because if you think about who Mike Vrabel has calling plays in New England, Josh McDaniel. And Josh McDaniel is somebody who is an established offensive coordinator. We all know that he's a great offensive coordinator, and he's probably not going to get another head coaching opportunity because he's already had 2. You look at, Drake May, who's an MVP candidate. So the roster that the Patriots have, I would say, is probably more talented than what Mike Vrabel had in his last 2 years. So I think when you're looking at this, it's all about context, and we're not sliding Vrabel because we all think he's a good coach. I don't think you or I have ever said that he's a bad coach, but it's really all about context.
Brandy on our text line says, as a Dolphins fan, I am annoyed at the Titans for firing Vrabel because he went and made the Patriots good again. And it's been a while since we've seen the Patriots in the Super Bowl. What, 6-7 years thereabouts since we saw the Patriots in the Super Bowl? Correct me if I'm wrong there, Parker. But, it's going to be the 9th rematch in a Super Bowl. New England has been involved in 4 of those matchups. Of course, Seattle and New England taking part in Super Bowl 49 at the end of the 2014 season. The infamous play, Malcolm Butler intercepting Russell Wilson at the 1-yard line to secure a 28-24 win in Super Bowl 49. And here's what I said on Friday, Parker, about Mike Vrabel and his time with the Titans and how it came to an end. Sometimes, even if a coach has led you to unprecedented success, there comes a time where things just get stale. I've used my experience covering the Predators in this exact situation. When the Predators fired Peter Laviolette in early January 2020, it felt like it was time. Laviolette had been the coach of the Predators for around 6 years, had led them to heights they had never reached as an organization in terms of how far they went in the playoffs, winning division titles, winning a President's Trophy. He's a fabulous coach. But I could tell, being in that dressing room every day, that it was time for a change, and that's what ultimately what happened. I also mentioned when the Predators decided to move off of Barry Trotz before hiring Peter Laviolette in 2014. Were there Predators fans who may have said in 2018 when Barry Trotz lifted the Stanley Cup with the Capitals, man, why did the Predators fire Barry Trotz? Maybe. But I think everyone around here at that time felt like it was time. So it's convenient to look back at how things ended here and wonder what would have happened had Vrabel stuck around. I mean, remember, he lost 18 of his final 24 games as Titans coach, 6-18. That's not all on him, but he also does wear it. So this isn't to say that the Titans didn't make a mistake, because in hindsight, it certainly looks like they did, but there is important context that is needed here. And it felt like from afar, you tell me, Parker, it felt like from afar that Vrabel may not have been completely all in with the Titans at the end of his tenure here. I won't go as far as to say that he checked out mentally, but I do wonder if he had one foot out the door near the end of his time with the Titans.
Yeah, no, and you could really tell that. I don't his relationship with Rand Carthon, no matter how much he tried to keep it private, it was pretty out there that they didn't necessarily get along. I'm sure he was sick of working with Amy. I have no doubts about that. But I kind of look at situations like what just happened in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, what just happened in Baltimore with John Harbaugh. Mike Tomlin, to me, no doubt, is a Hall of Fame caliber coach. But it gets to the point where, what is the expectation in Pittsburgh? It's to win Super Bowls. And we're talking about a team that had not won a playoff game in 7 years. And they just seem to, always be good enough to make the playoffs, but never do anything more than that. And they were never bad enough to be picking super high in the draft. Sometimes the message gets stale. And I'm not saying that was the case with Vrabel, but it's so easy just to look back at it and say, well, the Titans never should have fired him. Maybe he deserved another year. I don't know, because it's certainly gone downhill since. But if you take yourself back to where you were 2 years ago and how you were feeling, I guarantee there wasn't this much opinions, these many opinions being thrown around about it.
One texter says, ironically, I was okay with the firing of Vrabel and hoping Callahan was going to get us playing offense in a fashion that the Patriots are doing this year. Different guys making big plays in the passing game and still having a good run game. So I can understand that point. One texter says, I feel like it's pointless to keep talking about Mike Vrabel. I get it's a storyline, and I guess it makes sense to talk about it a little bit, but I hope it's not going to be every day for the next 2 weeks. Well, texter, it won't be every day for the next 2 weeks. But when your former coach goes to the Super Bowl 2 years after being fired, and the Titans are basically a national laughingstock, maybe that's too harsh of a word, Parker, but
no, you got it.
A lot of people today, in the wake of the Patriots going to the Super Bowl with Mike Vrabel, are asking, what the hell were the Tennessee Titans thinking by firing Mike Vrabel? And it could go down as one of the biggest self-owns in NFL history. It absolutely could. So, texter, Don't be concerned. We will not talk about Mike Vrabel every day for the next 2 weeks as we prepare for the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seahawks. But it is a storyline today. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the Super Bowl matchup. We'll also ask him about the latest on the Titans offensive coordinator search. TD coming up next, 615-737-1025. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game.
I got you, sir. What's up? Okay, cool.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan here with you. We are efforting Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter. We will bring him to you as soon as we can get him on the line. But let's continue our conversation about NFL Conference Championship weekend. 615-737-1025. Parker Gunner on our text line says there's no reason to feel sick about the Vrabel situation. He was 6-18 at the end. He had checked out some. The roster was only getting worse. He wouldn't have had made much of a difference these last 2 years. Maybe a win or two. Then everyone would have been screaming, you have to fire him. He's where he wants to be. So let me ask you that question, Parker. Let's say the Titans hadn't fired Mike Vrabel, but everything else sort of had played out the same in terms of the free agent signings and the draft picks and all of that. How many more wins do you think the Titans would have if Mike Vrabel was still the coach?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably say 10 or 12 or 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. And here's why I say that. I do not think Amy would give him the roster control that he wanted. And they certainly have given him the keys, it seems like, in New England, because he's like the beloved son coming back. So I don't think they would have given him the roster control that he had in New England. And also, too, you can tell by the way they hired Brian Callahan. They wanted an offensive guru. That was the word everybody threw around. They wanted a yes man type. So they swung the pendulum in the other direction. And when Brian Callahan got fired, now you swing the pendulum back and you go and get Robert Saleh, a guy that's very authoritative, very militaristic in his style of coaching, similar to Vrabel. So I don't think it would have had that same impact that it had in New England here, just because very different circumstances.
Here's something I was thinking about yesterday, Parker. Do you think the Titans will take any lessons from the fact that Mike Vrabel is now going to the Super Bowl in terms of how they handle Robert Saleh? Will they be more patient with Robert Saleh, perhaps, than maybe they would have had Mike Vrabel not gone and done everything that he's done in New England? Do you think Amy Adams Strunk and Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi and the rest of the Titans Brain Trust, do you think they're going to learn anything from what's happened to them since Mike Vrabel left and what Mike Vrabel has done with the Patriots?
Sure hope so. They better have. And I think that we're seeing some of the early signs of this. And here's why I say that. They made the roles clear about, okay, Mike Bergonzi, he's going to lead the coaching search. Here's what Chad Brinker's going to do. When they released that statement, they told us. And that's something that they hadn't really done. It was very cloudy. It was very nebulous throughout the last couple of years. Now we as fans and as media people, we understand the power structure a lot better than we previously did. So I think what the lesson that they need to take away from this is, okay, we've hired a coach. We have our general manager. This general manager really seems like he knows what he's doing. He seems like one of the few actual football people in the front office. We need to just let him do his job. And regardless of how you felt about the Robert Saleh, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, he's here now. It's official. The hire is official. We got to let him do his job. And hopefully a little bit more patience is involved with this, because over the last 4 years, the Titans have either hired or fired somebody in a major position, whether that be general manager or head coach. So I hope a little bit more patience is involved. And I also hope there's a lot less meddling, whether that be Chad Brinker or Amy Adams Strunk. Just let the football people do their job.
Let's move on to the NFC Championship game. The Seattle Seahawks win a thriller, 31-27 against the LA Rams. Sam Darnold exercises his Rams demons. The Rams have given Sam Darnold so many fits over the past couple of years, but he had a fabulous game last night for the Seattle Seahawks. 25 of 36, 346 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It certainly helps that he has Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had 10 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown on 12 targets. So once again, we are treated to just the 9th Super Bowl rematch. These two teams met at the end of the 2014 season. The Patriots won that Super Bowl 28-24. Parker, your number one takeaway from the Seahawks win against the Rams last night in the NFC title game?
I'm not going to say anything that everybody else hasn't already said, but it's Sam Darnold. I mean, you literally you brought this up. What he did with the Vikings last year against the Rams in the first round of the playoff, his performance against the Detroit Lions to potentially get the 1 seed in the NFC, he didn't look good. And how he's been able to revamp his career and get to this point, and not to mention too, he had the oblique injury coming in. And still, he was able to throw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, didn't turn the football over. This is the biggest question I had going into this matchup. Were we going to see the Sam Darnold of old, or were we going to see the Sam Darnold that we were used to seeing in the regular season this year? And he proved to us that, hey, that guy that was showing up in the regular season also showed up in the postseason. So it shows that a guy that's been in the league for, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, is still growing and still learning. So it takes time to truly develop these quarterbacks. There are always going to be those rare instances where, okay, Jaden Daniels comes in the league year 1, has his team 1 win away from the Super Bowl. Okay, Drake May, MVP contention year 2. It doesn't always work out like that. But how can you not be absolutely pumped for Sam Darnold?
Sam Darnold on his 5th team in 8 years since entering the NFL. Started with the Jets, of course, made a pit stop in Carolina, went to San Francisco for a season, went to Minnesota for a season, won 14 games, then went to Seattle where he also won 14 games. So Sam Darnold as a starter the past 2 years in the regular season, 28-6. And now he is off to the Super Bowl where no reclamation project quarterback has gone before. But the most talked about play in the game yesterday, Parker, was Tariq Woolen's taunting call that would have made it fourth. It was 4th down. It was 4th down and 12. Woolen stops Puka Nacua from catching the ball deep, starts yapping at the sideline, the Rams sideline, gets hit with a 15-yard penalty for taunting, and on the very next play, gets burned by Nacua for a 34-yard touchdown that kept it close. He was getting read the riot act by his teammates on the sideline. What did you make of that whole scenario and that call specifically?
It was just selfish. It was selfish because you make an excellent play on the football, you get a huge stop on 3rd down, and you shot yourself in the foot. It was completely unnecessary. And then to make it worse, you give up a touchdown on the very next play to Puka Nacua. So it was very selfish, and it would have been a much bigger talking point, I feel like, if the Seahawks were to lose that football game. But fortunately for him, the team bailed him out. But I was watching that, and I was thinking to myself, man, I hope whatever you said was worth it, because your teammates are not going to be happy with you. And surely enough, when they panned him on the sidelines, they weren't. And if I was his teammate, I would be just as upset, because you cost us, and you could have cost us the football game. But again, the team bailed him out.
This is the unlikeliest Super Bowl matchup ever based on the preseason Super Bowl odds for each team. Mike Sando of The Athletic had a great chart and a story on The Athletic earlier today. The Patriots were 80-1 odds at the start of the season to win the Super Bowl. The Seahawks were 60-1 odds, combined 4,800-1 odds. So that makes this the unlikeliest Super Bowl matchup ever. The previous record, the Rams beating the Titans in 1999, a combined preseason odds of 4,500-1. The Rams were 150-1. Of course, that was the Kurt Warner Super Bowl, came out of nowhere, of course. And then the Titans were 30-1 odds in 1999. So I love that, Parker. The fact that these two teams that missed the playoffs last season, that had some of the longest odds to win the Super Bowl, are in the Super Bowl, making this the most improbable Super Bowl we've ever seen.
It's been great. It's been great for entertainment purposes. It's been great for fans, just because there was so much parity in the league this year, and you didn't have your typical quarterbacks. You didn't have your Mahomes. You didn't have Lamar. You didn't have Joe Burrow. The Eagles were first-round exits. The Bills lost in the divisional round. So you didn't have your traditional superpowers advance as far as you might have expected in the preseason. So from an entertainment standpoint, I think this year's NFL playoffs may have been the best in my lifetime, and I've certainly enjoyed watching every game.
So what's your early read on Super Bowl 60 between the Patriots and the Seahawks?
The way the Seahawks are playing complementary football right now, top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency, I really do question the Patriots offense right now, and especially going up against that Seahawks defense. I just haven't seen what I would hope I would see from them at this point. So I am leaning Seahawks right now, and so are the odds makers. I think that the line is 4.5 in favor of Seattle. So that's where I'm leaning right now.
My question for you, Parker, is the Patriots had one of the easiest schedules, or the easiest schedule this season. A lot was made of the fact that the Patriots took advantage of an easy schedule, but they have, by my count, defeated 3 of the top 5 defenses in total defense in the postseason. Does that change your perspective at all on what the Patriots could do, because they've been tested by 3 of the best defenses in the NFL in the playoffs?
Yeah, when people tell me, well, look at who they've played, I don't really put much stock into that because after all, they're all professionals. Every team in the league is full of professionals, even if you're the worst. So the Patriots have just simply gone out and won the games that are in front of them, and they have beaten good teams. So I still think the Patriots they're in this position for a reason. So I don't put as much stock into the lighter schedule compared to the Seahawks and who they've had to play. I still think this is going to be a very good football team. I think we have the best 2 teams in the league, which is what you would hope for in the Super Bowl. So I'm very excited.
615-737-1025. We've got Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter. He will join us coming up next. He was dealing with some snow and ice related issues. We'll understand. 615-737-1025. Teron Davenport coming up next. We'll ask him about what he has seen in these playoffs, Mike Vrabel going to the Super Bowl, and what the Titans are going to do at offensive coordinator. 615-737-1025. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick 1025. The Game, Adam Vingen, Parker Kelly, and Brandon Bigsby here with you. Willie Donick and Derek Mason out today. Willie Donick traveling with the Predators. He might be able to join us at some point, before the end of the program. Derek Mason out, unfortunately. No power at the Mason household, nor is he able to leave his home because of the treacherous road conditions. So we're thinking of our man, D-Mace. But let's go to our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com, and welcome in our friend, Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, who is fueled by Parman Energy. Visit parmanenergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. TD, how you doing out there, man?
Hey, just doing what we got to do to survive, right? How you guys doing?
We're doing well as well. Glad that you could be with us. So let's start with, I think, the number one topic that is on every Titans fan's mind right now. What is the latest on the offensive coordinator search for the Titans?
Yeah, well, it's Brian Daboll is a likely candidate, but everything is on hold with the Bills, and they're filtering through the head coaching job that they have, which has been an interesting situation with the guys that they got interviewing, et cetera. And it's interesting because you look at Brian Daboll, they had him in there. They've met the Rooney Rule requirements. So if he was someone that they really, really wanted, he would have gotten the job. So we'll see what happens there. But then you do have Cliff Kingsbury and Rob Stenovich. Those guys are going to be interviewing as well. So those are options. One of the other candidates was Arthur Smith, but we know he's moved on and he has the job at Ohio State.
Teron, as you mentioned, it's been reported in many places, and you have reported it as well, that the Titans' preference would be to hire Brian Daboll as their offensive coordinator. How long are they willing to wait? Because Daboll, as you mentioned, interviewed with the Bills. He's also interviewed for the Raiders head coaching opening. He has that interest, but is there a timeline here that if Daboll is still flirting with other head coaching jobs, there come a point where the Titans have to move on to another option?
I think there does come a point where they do have to move on because you can't sit back and allow other options to be plucked off of the cabinet, so to speak. So when you look at the Eagles, there are multiple teams that are going to, and then as jobs get filled, they're going to have their coordinators. So you want to go ahead and make something happen so you're not stuck with your pants down. And I think that's kind of the situation that they're in. And that's why they've moved on and extended it to the other candidates that we mentioned.
Teron, as you mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury and Adam Stenovich interviewing for the offensive coordinator position today. Fans are familiar with Cliff Kingsbury from his time as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, going back to being a head coach at Texas Tech, and his work with Jaden Daniels in Washington last season. You tell me, how much of a fit do you think Cliff Kingsbury's offensive scheme, how much of a fit is it for Cam Ward?
I think it's a tremendous fit for Cam Ward. After all, it's the air raid offense. These are concepts that we know Cam Ward has excelled in, especially at Washington State and originally at Incarnate Word, with Eric Morris. So I think it's a fit there. The wide open, high percentage passing and taking the shots down the field, those are all good things. But to me, the one area where there should be some question is willingness to run the football and being able to impose your will running the ball. And we all saw down the stretch how Cam Ward, those last 8 games, you're talking about 1 interception as opposed to the 7 that he had previous and the previous 8 games. And then you also look at the 10 of his, 17 touchdowns came. And that was all when they were working the run game, play action, and just giving him those opportunities to take those shots that way. So I feel like to say it's a fit, but then again, it may not be a fit for the full team and be the most beneficial thing for Cam because you've got to have that run game filtered in. And then you also have the whole thing that seems to happen to Kingsbury all the time, whereas the offenses will start out good, but then as the year goes on, there's just a point where it's like, it's not working as well anymore. And now it's time to make those adjustments to the adjustments that the opposition makes. And it just doesn't seem like they've been good at doing that.
TD, one more for me before I hand it off to Parker. Adam Stenovich, Packers offensive coordinator. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know a lot about him, but there is one thing about him that I think worries Titans fans. He hasn't called plays. And I know that's not the end all be all, but how much of that should be taken into consideration as the Titans look at him as a potential OC?
Yeah, I think he deserves consideration. And although he hasn't called plays, he's helped structure an offense, and he saw the way plays were called successfully for a passer of a similar skill set in Jordan Love. So I think you have that. And then you look at the way Malik Willis came along. I'm not going to give all that credit to Stenavich or Matt LaFleur. I think together, they've worked to help those guys get to where they need to be. So to me, when I look at it, it's almost a been there, done that type of thing. I do understand the reservation because he hasn't called plays. He's not doing that now. So there's definitely going to be reservation about that because calling plays is an art. And I think when you really get in that groove and understand the things that go into it, then you're more effective. But everybody has to start somewhere. So it's just a matter of, do the Titans have enough patience to have that start for Stenavich be with Cam Ward? And I think that's the big thing. But like I said, there's an art to it. You got to know how to set plays up, and you got to know how to, give one look on a couple plays and then come back and give that look, but do something different. So it's going to be an interesting situation if he gets that duty. But me personally, I would move on to someone who has done it before.
TD, I'm really glad that y'all brought up Cliff Kingsbury because I've been thinking about him as a candidate and the type of air raid offense that he runs. And if you look at what Cam Ward did at Miami under Shannon Dawson and where Shannon Dawson comes from, it's that Dana Holgorsen tree. And the air raid offenses match up perfectly. But what really killed Cliff Kingsbury in Washington specifically is, they wanted to run no huddle a lot. But Dan Quinn wanted to, slow that down so his defense could have more time to rest. Does that also give you concern if he were to get hired here?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know how it is. You play quarterback. You know tempo. And as a receiver, I know like tempo that creates a sense of urgency. So I love tempo, but I get what a defensive-minded coach like Dan Quinn or what Robert Saleh would say, because you want to give your guys a chance to sit down, you know what I mean, and be off the field. You don't want to have those short drives. Like, you want to have your offense put together drives and keep the defense off the field. So I think that is something that would have to come up in the conversation. I would imagine Robert Saleh has talked to him about that. And I mean, look, like, you've seen in the past too, like look at Chip Kelly when he was with the Eagles. He tried that stuff, running 70 to 80 plays a game, and it just wasn't working, and the defense was always tired. So that is something to consider.
And also too for Brian Daboll, obviously he's kind of the apple of everybody's eye right now. Is there a world in which you think, if you're Brian Daboll, like, hey, maybe I'm not ready to be a head coach. Maybe I want to spend a year as a coordinator. Do you see that as a likely possibility, or do you see him just wanting to be a head coach again?
No, in no way do I see that. I think and I've used this analogy before, it's just like a relationship, right? You got a relationship that fails, and you go back and you look at that relationship and you say, man, what did I do to contribute towards the relationship failing? And so you get in your next one, you apply the things that you learned, right? And even Cam Ward, he said it, right? You got to lose to win. And I think in this case with Brian Daboll, he had the failure in New York with the Giants. And it's like, okay, what do I need to do to be a better coach next go round? Oh, I need to do this, this, and this. I'm more prepared because I've already been there and done that, and I know the mistake. So to me, I would imagine he feels he's more ready than he did when he left Buffalo and all the success there to take the Giants job. That's the way I would look at it.
And I'm sure the discourse has been with Mike Vrabel taking the Patriots to the Super Bowl. Everybody is, shouting their opinions. The Titans never should have fired him. Is Mike Vrabel making the Super Bowl the indictment on the Titans organization that everyone's making it out to be?
No, it's not. And just the same, have you noticed the way Mike Vrabel is with the players and just overall, he's even more personable now, right? Look at the way, he dealt with Drake May, after the turnovers that he had. He went over, put his hand around him, and you see him, forehead to forehead talking to him. Look at Stephon Diggs. Imagine the Mike Vrabel here in Nashville when Stephon Diggs had all that nonsense in the beginning of the year. Imagine that, Mike Vrabel. It wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? So I say all that to say this is a guy who, it's not an indictment on him, on the Titans. It's just it's a feather in his cap, so to speak, because it shows that he learned from the things that went wrong here. And I think, it's okay that he went on to go to the Super Bowl with the Patriots, and two things could be true, right? It ran its course here, and it got stale, and it didn't work anymore. He took time off. He got back into it, and boom, here you are. You know what I mean? So I think it's neither an indictment on him or the Titans, to be honest with you.
And last one for me. Are there any other names out there in this OC search that we're not talking about? And I wanted to ask about Nate Scheelhaus. Is he a possibility at all from the Rams?
I mean, I would imagine he'd be a possibility, but it looks like he's looking to leapfrog the coordinator position and become a head coach, because I believe he's interviewing with the Bills again or something like that. He's had, a few interviews. So, that would be a name that I would want if I was the Titans, but it just, I don't know for sure that that's something that he would do. I can't think of any other names, honestly. There have been, some things on the D coordinator side of things, but I can't think of anything else OC-wise.
Teron, I would love your early read on Super Bowl 60 between New England and Seattle. What's your take on that game 2 weeks out?
Yeah, I think the Patriots win. That's going to be a really fun game to watch defensively. I mean, you look at Nick Emmanwori, one of my favorite corners in Devin Witherspoon, and look, Ernest Jones IV, a guy who was right here in Nashville. Like, that defense is fun to watch. Obviously, the front with Leonard Williams, and Byron Murphy, who was Devondre Sweat's teammate at Texas. There's a lot to watch there. And hey, what more can you say about Jackson Smith and Jigma? So, and Sam Darnold, I think he's showing some people that he could step up in big game. But I just look at the flip side of it. The Patriots, they just seem like they have something going. And that coaching staff and Mike Vrabel, he's going to have those guys ready. Shout out Todd Downing, Tony Dews, you know what I mean, the other TDs. And then you look at, Clint McMillan. Like, there's so many good coaches on that organization. And then all the weapons that they have, I think that they end up winning. I'm going to go like a 17-13 type of score.
Okay. What do you think about Denard Wilson landing in New York with John Harbaugh? I know they have the shared history, but what do you make of that fit for Denard Wilson?
So that deal is not all the way done, but, man, props to Denard Wilson for getting that job. And I think you look at what he had to do here. I mean, from November on, 3 of the 5 DBs in the secondary weren't even on a roster, not the Titans roster, a roster. They weren't on a roster in training camp. So that just kind of shows you what he had to deal with. And I think, it's great for him to get that job. I think he landed in a good place. They got the pass rushers up front, do some things to help the secondary a little bit more, but he's a secondary specialist. And you got continuity there with John Harbaugh as the coach. So props to him. Hopefully that means, some of the other coaches like, Tracy Rocker, like Frank Bush, Steve Jackson, hopefully that means that they come along as well, because they're all great people and I enjoy working with them over the last 2 years.
Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, has been our guest on D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick. He joins us every Monday, and he is fueled by Parman Energy. Visit parmanenergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution. TD, great stuff as always. Stay warm, stay safe. We'll catch up next week.
I appreciate you guys.
615-737-1025. Put down a Patriots win in the Super Bowl for Teron Davenport. I am not ready, Parker, to make my choice yet. I need to do a little bit more research before I lay down my final bet on that game. By the way, I do want to get your thoughts on this. Speaking of the Patriots, it's Patriots adjacent. If you're wondering how seriously the NFL takes the Pro Bowl, how do you feel about Shedeur Sanders being added to the Pro Bowl games to replace Drake May?
How did I know this would come up today?
At some point it was going to.
It was only one of the biggest headlines of the day, but no, to me, I mean, great for Shedeur. This is kind of like the Tyler Huntley situation from a couple years ago where he made it. And I don't know how many people turned this down before they got to Shedeur Sanders, but he's there, and wishing him nothing but the best. But yeah, I saw the news, and at first, to be honest with you, I thought it was fake. I thought it was an account trying to get me, but it's real. So
another coaching hire, not a head coaching hire, but I'd be curious for your thoughts on this, Parker, because I wondered about this person for a job with the Titans. Mike Kafka is being hired by the Detroit Lions per Jordan Raanan of ESPN. He was the Giants' interim coach this year, also their offensive coordinator and assistant head coach. I wondered about Kafka as an offensive coordinator, considering his ties to Kansas City, right? If I'm not mistaken, did he work in Kansas City at some point?
I believe he did.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wondered about Kafka as a potential offensive coordinator for the Titans, but he is off to the Lions in what is expected to be a high-ranking offensive assistant role. So, what do you think about Mike Kafka?
Yeah, that's interesting because I know the Lions, they hired Drew Petzing from the Arizona Cardinals, and they actually didn't go with Mike McDaniel, who interviewed for their offensive coordinator position. So I think that kind of tells you how he did in interviews, because if you would have told me that Mike McDaniel interviewed with the Lions for their OC spot, I thought he would have been a shoo-in. And I was very caught off guard by the fact that they went with Petzing. But I think you bring in Kafka, a guy that has offensive coordinator experience, and he won't be in that role necessarily, but giving him a position in the offense that, again, is, one of those senior positions, I think it can only benefit them. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Campbell is calling plays again next year for Detroit.
Let's go to our phone line driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com, and welcome in Mike from Old Hickory. Mike, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yep, I just like to comment. The only reason I'm going to watch the Super Bowl this year is because of one person, Mike Vrabel. I could care less about the Seattle Seahawks, and the whole season was kind of crazy anyway. But guess who we had? Who was coaching the Titans? What was it, 2 years ago?
Yep.
3 years ago? Mike Vrabel. And now he's back down there in the Super Bowl. And so this is what makes me really disgusted, is that Amy, she gave him up and fired him, and it came from the top. It didn't come from the general manager. It came from the top. And now he's leading the Patriots to a Super Bowl. And this is what bothers me, is I don't even know, what's his name, Robert, the new coach of the Titans?
Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh.
Yeah. I've never heard of him. And I just am worried now we're going to go down the path of another bad season. And we had Mike Vrabel, who's now in the Super Bowl.
Thank you for the call, Mike. Parker, Mike speaks for a lot of Titans fans. I'm sort of shocked that Mike has never heard of Robert Saleh. I know his record as a head coach with the Jets wasn't sparkling, but he has been a head coach in the NFL before. But we're going to get a lot of those calls over the next couple of weeks, Parker.
Yeah, Mike speaks on behalf of most Titans fans, and again, it's just revisionist history. And man, you don't know who Robert Saleh is? That's crazy.
Well, Robert Saleh, Mike, so that you can introduce yourself virtually. I guess you're not going to actually meet Robert Saleh, but if you would like to watch Robert Saleh introduce himself to all of you, you can do that Thursday afternoon. It was supposed to be Wednesday, but of course, I assume because of the weather outside, it's been pushed back a day. So Robert Saleh's introductory news conference will be held on Thursday afternoon. 615-737-1025. We were asking Teron Davenport about the offensive coordinator search for the Tennessee Titans. Parker Kelly knows a thing or two about all of this, way more than I do. So I want to pick Parker's brain on the potential offensive coordinator candidates for the Tennessee Titans. We will do that next. 615-737-1025. In the meantime, we do have tickets to give away, and we will do that right now as soon as I find it. There it is. Okay. If you would like a pair of tickets to the Nashville Hoops Showdown featuring Ohio State and Virginia on Saturday, February 14th at Bridgestone Arena, be caller number 4 right now at 615-737-1025. Caller number 4 will win a pair of tickets to see Ohio State versus Virginia men's basketball Saturday, February 14th at Bridgestone Arena. Caller number 4 right now, 615-737-1025. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick 1025. The game. Adam Vingen, Parker Kelly here with you. Willie Donick traveling with the Predators today. Derek Mason, unfortunately, stuck at home without power. We're thinking about you, D-Mace. We hope to see you real soon. But Parker pulling double duty today. Co-hosted Next Man Up with Jake Lyman from 9 to noon. Was kind enough to jump back on with me today up until 6 p.m. So, Parker, we were talking about the offensive coordinator position with Teron Davenport in the previous segment. And a lot of Titans are wondering who the hell is going to be Robert Saleh's offensive coordinator, because some of the choices, some of the OCs who were linked to the Titans have now found other jobs. For example, Bobby Slowick, who used to be the OC in Houston, worked with the Miami Dolphins as a passing game coordinator this past season, was promoted to offensive coordinator as part of Jeff Hafley's staff with the Dolphins. So Bobby Slowick off the list. Arthur Smith, former Titans OC, spent the past couple of years in Pittsburgh in the same position. Going back to college, or going to college, hired by Ohio State as the Buckeyes offensive coordinator. So you take Arthur Smith off the list. We mentioned Brian Daboll. I saw a report on NFL Network that said, quote, the Tennessee Titans would like to hire him ASAP, but he is still interviewing for head coaching jobs. He interviewed in Buffalo. He interviewed in Las Vegas. So we're waiting to see if that's the shoe to drop. Will Brian Daboll not get one of these head coaching positions and ultimately come to Tennessee as the offensive coordinator? But I'm wondering, Parker, a lot of Titans fans are wondering who is going to be Robert Saleh's offensive coordinator, because it's kind of a big deal to find the offensive play caller for the defensive-minded head coach.
Yeah, no doubt, because you bring in a defensive guy in Robert Saleh, and you're like, okay, that's fine. You know, people like the Robert Saleh hire. I personally was very skeptical, and to be honest, I still am skeptical, because my main concern is Cam Ward. Because if Cam Ward doesn't work out, new head coach isn't going to work out. Mike Burgundy is not going to work out. Everything rests on Cam Ward's shoulders. You need him to work out if you want to keep your job. So now the question becomes, all right, who's going to be the guy to develop him? The apple of everyone's eye, Brian Daboll, given what he was able to do with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen's weakness at points has been, okay, I need to be Superman here. And Josh Allen certainly has that capability, but sometimes he gets a little too aggressive and can turn the football over. Brian Daboll was able to help him, and Joe Brady was able to further that, where, okay, you don't have to be Superman all the time. You can be a point guard, you can distribute, and then when you need to be, you can do that because you're Josh Allen. Cam Ward has a little bit of that in him, where he feels like he needs to be Superman sometimes, and he's certainly able to make spectacular plays on a regular basis, but he ultimately needs somebody to help him tone that down a little bit and sometimes take the easy completions, take the check downs. And I think we started to see Cam Ward do that, but that's something that he's going to have to do better. And Brian Daboll, I think, would be the perfect person to help him with that.
So it's been reported by multiple reporters that the Titans are interviewing Cliff Kingsbury and Adam Stenavich today for their offensive coordinator job. Let's start with Kingsbury. A lot of football fans, a lot of Titans fans are familiar with Cliff Kingsbury. He was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. He coached Texas Tech in college. He's been working as the Commanders' offensive coordinator until recently. They've decided to part ways after only a couple of years. But the list of quarterbacks who Kingsbury has played a role in developing is impressive. Patrick Mahomes, of course, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. So it would make sense on paper for Kingsbury to add Cam Ward to that list. Jaden Daniels had an outstanding rookie season under Kingsbury's tutelage. He suffered multiple injuries this season. He was out of the lineup for most of the season, and that's why the Commanders took a big step back after making it to the NFC title game a year ago, if I recall correctly. But you seem to like the fit between Cliff Kingsbury and Cam Ward. So for those of us who are not as in tune with this as you are, explain what Cliff Kingsbury likes to do offensively and why that would work for the Titans.
Well, I certainly think it would be a good consolation prize if the Titans were not able to get Dayball and they bring in Cliff Kingsbury, because you go back and you watch when he was the head coach at Texas Tech with Mahomes, they ran the air raid, pretty much to perfection. And that comes from Mike Leach. Cliff Kingsbury is kind of one of those Mike Leach disciples. When he went to Arizona, well, he was the head coach, so he already had a lot on his shoulders. With this position, you get to be the offensive coordinator and just focus on the offense. You don't have to worry about being the head coach. And he did get to work with Kyler Murray. And then you watch what he was able to do with Washington. And he ran a lot of RPOs, which Jaden Daniels was fantastic at. Cam Ward is also fantastic at that. He ran those a lot at Miami. But the big thing that draws me to Cliff Kingsbury, if the Titans don't happen to get Dayball, is what Shannon Dawson, his offensive coordinator at Miami, they run the air raid. And Shannon Dawson is a product of Dana Holgerson, who also runs the air raid. He ran that at Houston, ran it at West Virginia, and this all stems from Mike Leach. So the system, the terminology is all pretty much intact, but there are a lot of downsides. Like TD mentioned, sometimes Cliff Kingsbury's offenses tend to flame out. What got him in trouble in Washington was the fact that they ran so much up tempo and so much no huddle. They ran it more than any other team in the league. Dan Quinn, who's a defensive guy, much like Robert Saleh, said, "Hey, Cliff, you need to slow down. Our defense needs some rest." And he basically ignored that. So when you ignore the head coach's orders, that's not going to work out well for you. So there are some concerns. I do think the offenses would mesh with what Cam Ward likes to do, but you have to be aware of the other side of it.
Let's talk about the other candidate who is being interviewed today, Adam Stenavich, the Green Bay Packers offensive coordinator. And as I told TD Parker, I don't know much of anything about Adam Stenavich, but the one thing I know that Titans fans have glommed onto is the fact that Stenavich does not call plays. And I remember when this process started, when the Titans fired Brian Callahan, here on DVD, we did a sort of head coaching Tinder / Bumble / dating profile sort of thing. And I know this is not for the head coaching position, but the offensive play caller is incredibly important. And my one non-negotiable was no non-play calling OCs. So I hear that and I go, I'm not sure. But you know more about this than I do. So tell me if Adam Stenavich should be a legitimate candidate despite the fact that he does not call offensive plays in Green Bay.
Well, I'll start off by saying you have every right to be skeptical, because what Robert Saleh is looking for is a head coach of the offense. And I understand the desire, maybe what entices you about hiring Stenavich is, he worked with Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, I think, is a really, really good offensive mind. Just contrary to what Robbie Stanley might think, I think he's a fine offensive mind. He's worked with Jordan Love. He's been able to develop him. And Stenavich has observed that during his time in Green Bay. But also at the same time is, how many times have the Titans taken a chance on somebody that is a first-timer and it hasn't worked out, especially in recent memory? Nick Holes, Colt Anderson being two, and I know they were, one was offensive coordinator, the other special teams, but it should give you a little bit of concern there. So basically what I'm getting out of this conversation is the Titans desperately need Brian Daboll, somebody who has experience, somebody who's proven that they can develop a raw prospect and quarterback, because then you're left with Cliff Kingsbury and Stenavich, who's never called plays.
I saw Paul Kaharski report earlier that Thad Lewis, who was quarterback's coach in Tampa Bay last season, will also interview for this position. What do you know about him?
I know that he played a critical role in getting Baker Mayfield to where he was. So that's certainly an option as well. I know that fulfilled the Rooney Rule as well for the offensive coordinator spot. So yeah, I think that is pretty enticing as well, and could be a viable option if Brian Daboll doesn't work out, because Baker Mayfield was pretty much left for dead after Cleveland. He went to work with, worked in Carolina, worked in LA for a little bit under Sean McVay, kind of turned his career around at that point. And then getting to Buccaneers, we really saw him start to blossom. And while Thad Lewis wasn't the offensive coordinator, he still played a major role in that.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the Titans offensive coordinator search. Brian Daboll still out there. Cliff Kingsbury still out there. Adam Stenovich, Thad Lewis, some of the names connected to the Tennessee Titans. Their pool of candidates seems to be shrinking here, with Arthur Smith off to Ohio State, Bobby Slowick being promoted in Miami. Your favorite candidate, 615-737-1025. We'll continue the conversation and take your reaction coming up next. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick 1025. The Game. Adam Vingan, Parker Kelly here with you. Willie Donick and Derek Mason out today. Willie Donick in Boston with the Predators, where they will take on the Bruins to start a road trip tomorrow. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 1025 The Game. Predators GM Barry Trotz expected to join us tomorrow as well for his weekly chat. Derek, we're thinking about you, man. Derek is stuck at home. I feel really bad for Derek Parker. He's been without power, last I checked, since 6 a.m. yesterday, and his roads are impassable because of the ice and down power line. So Derek is literally stuck at home. So we're thinking about you, D-Mace.
Terrible. Like all the people without power. My wife and I just took a walk before the show started, and there are all these trees that are down. It's just a terrible situation. So D-Mace, absolutely thinking about you.
Last I checked at Nashville Electric Service, 157,656 customers still without power after the storm over the weekend. That number was more than 200,000 as recently as this morning, late last night. So NES doing all it can to get power back on. But I saw something yesterday, Parker, that was astounding. I believe our friend Chad Withrow from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow put this out there. That at one point last night, roughly 20% of all power outages in the United States were concentrated in Tennessee. And it's still that way. I'm looking at that website right now. It's called poweroutage.com, which is a handy URL. 655,232 total U.S. customers without power, 214,995 in Tennessee alone. So that's roughly a third of all the power outages in the country are located here in Tennessee. So if you are one of those people without power, please stay safe. Please stay warm. It is supposed to get incredibly cold overnight. So if you have the resources to stay with a friend, stay with a family member, please do so. Bundle up and be neighborly. That's been my piece of advice for the past few days. Be neighborly. If you have someone that you can help, please do so. And we will keep you posted on any and all updates from the city on the situation. But also, just one other thing, too, as I'm thinking about it. Please be incredibly careful if you're driving. Our station is off of Murfreesboro Pike, which is a major road, and the roads look fairly clear. I mean, I was able to drive here without any issue, but I went up Murfreesboro Pike a little bit earlier before I came in looking for something to eat. And over on Murfreesboro Pike around Nashboro Village, there was a car on its turned upside down. There was a bad enough wreck that someone's car flipped. Hopefully the driver is okay. I didn't see anybody. But please be careful if you're driving, especially if you're driving at night, because of all of the stuff that's melted today will refreeze. So please, please, please be careful, be vigilant while you're driving. I know that it can be hard because you want to talk and text and listen to this show, among others, and interact with us, but just be safe when you're driving because it's still treacherous out there, even though that some melting has started. Scott in Shelbyville on our text line driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com says, Adam Stenovich would be the equivalent of Save-A-Lot or Dollar Tree peanut butter. Now, I've never had Save-A-Lot or Dollar Tree peanut butter. Scott's making it sound like it's pretty bad. But I do think, Parker, that the Titans would have a difficult time selling an offensive coordinator who has never called plays, because that was a selling point for Brian Callahan. I always like to do this. I don't know why I do this, but I've referenced it on the show a couple of times. I like to look at the news release when the Titans hired Brian Callahan, and a lot of it was spent about, look at all of these great quarterbacks Brian Callahan worked with, whether it was Peyton Manning or Matthew Stafford or Derek Carr. You know, he was on the coaching staff with these quarterbacks, but I always thought it was a bit, I don't want to say misleading, because he did, in fact, work with those quarterbacks, but I was sort of like, what could Brian Callahan teach Peyton Manning at that stage of Peyton Manning's career?
Nothing.
You know?
Nothing.
So, and I bet you could say the same about Stafford and Derek Carr if you want to a lesser extent. So Stenavich, again, I don't know much about him. He obviously has a hand in planning the offense for the Green Bay Packers with Matt LaFleur, but I know that the Titans aren't necessarily making these decisions, Parker, based on what fans would like and not like, but hiring an offensive coordinator who's never called plays seems like a big no-no for me.
Again, every fan who feels that way has a right to feel that way. And that's what happens when you wait, because jobs are being open left and right. Now they're being filled. And waiting on Dayball has cost you three candidates: Mike McDaniel, Bobby Slowick, and now Arthur Smith. So how much longer can you afford to wait? I believe the answer is not too much longer, because at some point you do have to make a decision. And this is just the result of, when you're getting on down the list of candidates, okay, my first candidate was taken second, and so on. Eventually, you're going to get down the list, and it's not going to look as pretty on paper. But again, the fans have a right to feel that way, because what we have all said at this station, we believe the Titans need a play caller with experience, somebody who can be the head coach of the offense. Stanovich has never called plays, so there's every right to be concerned right there.
I have a couple of questions for you on some of the offensive coordinator candidates who have found work elsewhere. I want to start with Arthur Smith. Are you surprised he decided to go back to college, going to Ohio State versus finding a job in the NFL?
A little bit. At the same time, I think it makes sense, just because, Ryan Day and then the way he hires. If you're the offensive coordinator at Ohio State and you have success, you're going to get a job somewhere else. And he's kind of been, at first he started calling plays, then he moved on to Chip Kelly, then it was Brian Hartline, and now Arthur Smith. He got Matt Patricia last year. So both of his coordinators now have made their living in the NFL. So it didn't necessarily surprise me from that standpoint, but I didn't expect it. And then also, too, I think, if you're looking a couple years down the road at Bill Belichick's future at North Carolina, how much longer does he have there? And I see Arthur Smith, assuming he has success at Ohio State, which I do think he'll have, he's probably going to go after that head coaching vacancy if and when it does come open, because that's his alma mater. So I guess if you're looking at it from that standpoint, it shouldn't be that surprising.
Bobby Slowick, was his reputation repaired by the fact that CJ Stroud struggled so much in the postseason?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think it goes to show that, maybe it wasn't Bobby Slowick's fault, because now Nick Caley has been fired too. And they're having some serious uncomfortable conversations in Houston on if CJ Stroud is the guy or not moving forward. I mean, you can't tell me there wasn't a legit discussion at halftime of that Patriots game on, should we go to Davis Mills? Davis Mills looked pretty good in relief at a couple points earlier in the season. Should we go to him? Those conversations were absolutely had, and I know for a fact that fan base and the coaching staff and everybody is talking about if CJ Stroud is going to be the guy moving forward, because he hasn't looked the same, since his rookie year. So I think that goes to show that, no, it wasn't just Bobby Slowick's fault, because we brought in a new guy and it didn't work out either. So I don't think that's necessarily an indictment on Bobby Slowick to a certain extent.
Sidebar here. Let's stay on CJ Stroud for a moment, because I was surprised by how many turnovers he had in 2 playoff games. He had 5 fumbles against the Steelers. He only lost 2 of them, but he still fumbled the ball 5 times. He also threw 4 picks in the first half against the Patriots. The Texans do have a big decision to make this offseason. How would you handle that if you were them?
Well, I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable giving him $55 million, because we've seen, the market for these quarterbacks. Sometimes these teams are not sure if their guy is going to be the franchise guy moving forward, but they can't afford to move off, because you don't know what the free agency market is going to look like. Jordan Love and the Packers, they took a chance, and I think it turned out in their favor. Jacksonville, they took a chance with Trevor Lawrence, paying him $55 million. That worked out in their favor. The Dolphins, they took a chance on Tua, and that looks like it's not going to work out. So at this point, I do not feel comfortable giving CJ Stroud that much money. So you really got to see how he does this year before making a decision. But there are some tough conversations being had, no doubt.
So your number one choice for Titans offensive coordinator is Brian Daboll, followed by Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, so, I mean, those are my options. I don't feel comfortable taking a guy who's never called plays. So yeah, it'd probably be Dayball 1 and Kingsbury 2.
I assume you will be at Robert Saleh's news conference later this week.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try.
What are the questions that you think must be answered, must be asked on Thursday when he meets the media for the first time?
Really, there's one pressing thing I want to know, and that is, what is your plan for Cam Ward? Because from what I've heard, from who I've talked to, he presented a plan to the Titans brass that obviously sold them, or else they wouldn't have made the decision as quickly as they did when they brought him in for his interview. And then I'm also told that he had a backup plan in case the first plan didn't work out, and that plan was also good. So that's great. I'm sure the plan that he presented to the New York Jets sounded good as well. So, but I want to see how it works out, because until I see the plan start to, take fruition and work out in Cam Ward's favor, I'm going to be skeptical. I was very skeptical from the start with Saleh, and I still am. And I think those that feel the way that I do have every right to feel that way.
Why were you skeptical of Saleh from the start?
Well, because I believe you can't, the stench that came out that followed him out of New York, it's still there. We can't ignore that. And I get it, it may not have been all his fault, but he certainly played a role, because that was the coaching staff that also drafted Zach Wilson. That was also the coaching staff that decided to bring in Aaron Rodgers, and some of the decisions that they made with roster construction. He certainly played a role in that. Not to say that it was all his fault. And I get that he is a defensive mind. I get that he has great defenses and he's a culture builder and guys want to play for him. I get all of that. But again, my main point of concern is Cam Ward, because that is the hope of the franchise rests on Cam Ward's shoulders and his ability to develop.
I talked about this last week with Willie and Derek, and we had Zach Rosenblatt on from The Athletic, who covers the Jets and covered Robert Saleh when he was head coach of the Jets. And the question a lot of us have here is, okay, how much of his 20-36 record can you put on the fact that he coached the New York Jets? I mean, the New York Jets haven't made the playoffs in 15 years, which could be the longest playoff drought in North American professional sports. They're tied with the Buffalo Sabres right now in the NHL. The Sabres could make the playoffs for the first time in a decade and a half, which could leave the Jets all alone as the team with the longest playoff drought in North American major professional sports. So you have to take that into account. But Rosenblatt said you can't completely disregard his record solely because he was the head coach of the New York Jets. I am curious to learn what he learned from that experience and what he will do with his second chance.
Yeah, and now that he's here, I'm not going to just continue saying that I'm skeptical, because I've already said it. So I'm going to give him, I hope that I'm wrong. I really do, because I am ultimately a Titans fan. I want to see them do well. So I hope Saleh works out, and I hope that I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, I will happily come on the air and admit it. I think when Saleh was the coach of the Jets, they had some pieces. They had a little bit of a better roster, with Sauce Gardner at corner and Quinn Williams and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and some of these guys. And he still was not able to get the job done. And I know a lot of that too was, they were kind of a quarterback away, and the Aaron Rodgers experiment didn't work out. So that just cannot be ignored. Well, he did go to Green Bay, and he got to, see how that team operates. And I'm not going to come on here and say that he can't learn, from his first, because we all need to fail sometimes to learn. So I'm not going to put that past Robert Saleh, and I hope that that's the case. But I think that that's really the reason why I'm so skeptical.
615-737-1025 will take your thoughts on the Titans hiring of Robert Saleh, who will meet the media on Thursday. It was supposed to be Wednesday, but it's been pushed back a day to Thursday. 615-737-1025. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick 1025. The Game. Adam Vingen, Parker Kelly, Brandon Bigsby here with you on Monday evening. We hope you are doing well as we start to dig ourselves out of this ice, snow, sleet, freezing rain, dumb storm that we had over the weekend. I hope you are all excuse me. See, I'm all tongue-tied already. I hope you are all staying warm and safe. If you don't have to go anywhere, try not to go anywhere. The roads, the major roads, have vastly improved, but the side roads, the back roads are still coated in ice. That's why Derek Mason isn't here today. Derek Mason literally stuck at home. He has no power. He can't drive his car because the roads are full of ice and there are down power lines all over the place in his neighborhood. So Derek Mason, unfortunately, stuck at home. We hope he's staying safe. Willie Donick with the Predators. Willie Donick is expected to join the show tomorrow from Boston, where the Predators take on the Boston Bruins. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 1025. The Game. Barry Trotz will join us tomorrow as well, a shortened version of DVD tomorrow, just from 3 to 5, with the Predators game an hour earlier Central Time. But, Parker, I would love your opinion on this, as we were just having this conversation in the studio during the break. There are still a few coach openings left in the NFL. Here's my first question. Who the hell is going to be the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and why does nobody want that job?
Because I don't know. I have no idea. And can you blame him? I mean, who really does want that Cleveland job? It hasn't worked out for many people. Kevin Stefanski, a two-time coach of the year, just got fired. So the expectations are really, really low in Cleveland. I don't think it's a great place to live. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you.
So Jacksonville Jaguars offensive coordinator Grant Udinski was a front runner for the position. He withdrew from the Browns head coaching search. I believe he is staying with the Jaguars and receiving a big raise to do so. So according to Cleveland.com, the remaining candidates for the Browns job: Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken, Rams pass game coordinator Nate Scheelhaus, and Commanders running backs coach / run game coordinator Anthony Lynn. Of that group, who would you give that job to if it were up to you?
I'm promoting Jim Schwartz. He's done a great job with the defense. He's had Cleveland's defense clicking on, every level for, really since he's been there. So I promote him, and I would try to. I don't know if this would work, because I know Nate Scheelhaus is kind of a star in the making, the pass game coordinator of the Rams. I would try to bring him on as offensive coordinator. I don't know if that would work. I don't think it would. But if I was in charge, that's what I would try to do.
I don't know much about this Nate Scheelhaus. I've been hearing his name quite a bit lately. Is it just because he's got the Sean McVay rub, or is there something more about him that's intriguing to all of these teams?
Hey, you know how this league works. If you've either worked for Shanahan, you've either worked for Sean McVay, coordinator at any level, you're going to get a head coaching job at some point. That's just how it works.
That is true. Let me ask you about another hire that was made in the NFL over the weekend. Mike McCarthy becoming the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You may have heard about this once or twice. He's from Pittsburgh, so he gets to go home. Just the fourth head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers since 1969, after Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and of course, Mike Tomlin. The Steelers are in an interesting position, Parker, because that is a team that screams rebuild. Yes, famously, Mike Tomlin never had a losing season as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for nearly 2 decades. But they have lost, 6, 7 consecutive playoff games, and their owner is against the idea of rebuilding. The hiring of Mike McCarthy crystallizes that for me, Parker, that the Steelers have no intention of taking a step back anytime soon.
First of all, I just want to thank you for bringing this up, because you're throwing me an alley-oop. I have several friends that are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, And I had the conversation with him. I had this conversation about Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, no doubt, is a Hall of Famer. But I believe it was time for a mutual parting of ways, and I hope that's how it would have went down. I don't believe you should ever fire a guy like Mike Tomlin, who's done so much for that organization, is so well respected by the players. I'm very happy that he decided to step down instead of them, the organization firing him. But when you make this move with Mike McCarthy, to me, that is a lateral move, if not a step down from Mike Tomlin. I get it. He's worked with Aaron Rodgers, but you bring Aaron Rodgers back for a year, where does that exactly get you? Because the Steelers have always had a really good defense. They've always been able to run the football effectively. They just have really been missing that elite / really good component at quarterback. So if you bring back Aaron Rodgers for another year, what exactly does that do for you? Again, the standard in Pittsburgh is winning Super Bowls. It is not losing 7 years in a row in the first round of the playoffs or just being good enough to squeak in. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that has, 6 Super Bowls? That's not the standard. So I believe that I applaud the Ravens. If you're going to move on from John Harbaugh, at least take a swing on a guy like Jesse Minter, who is an up-and-comer, and you believe, has the every trait to be a head coach. I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers should have taken a similar route because I just don't think that Mike McCarthy hire does much for your organization besides be where you are the last few years.
Brandon, you said you had a question for us.
Yeah, Parker, I think you made a really good point about what does Mike McCarthy do for you compared to Mike Tomlin. And over the last, I think, really 5 years, the biggest gripe, especially amongst Pittsburgh fans and media, has been we're not good enough to be a Super Bowl contender, but we're not bad enough to be within that top 10 pick range. Do you feel like potentially now that you go from Mike Tomlin to Mike McCarthy, maybe this wasn't a Mike Tomlin thing that everyone was blaming it on him? Maybe this is more of an ownership thing. We talk about all the time how ownership, it starts at the top. Maybe some of that Pittsburgh being stuck in kind of the messy middle isn't a Mike Tomlin doing, but it starts with the ownership, and maybe this is a continuation for it.
Sure. And I have a hard time because there was an article in The Athletic that was really good talking about Mike Tomlin's final meeting with the team and how much, everybody in that room adored and respected and they were really caught off guard and they were very saddened to hear that he was stepping down. So I don't know if it was a message getting stale, but again, I just feel like at some point, what really cost the Pittsburgh Steelers was the fact that they were so consistent, going 9-8, 10-7, year in and year out, that they were never bad enough to be drafting a quarterback in the top 10. And at the same time, you're an early first round exit. So I believe at some point, if you're the organization, you have to get uncomfortable and you have to take a big swing.
The Super Bowl has been set after the conference championship games yesterday. The New England Patriots defeating the Denver Broncos 10-7. The Seattle Seahawks defeating the LA Rams 31-27. So the Super Bowl is set. That matchup in Santa Clara, California, home of the San Francisco 49ers, on February 8th. Seattle favored by 4.5. And we've heard from a lot of you so far today on Mike Vrabel making it to the Super Bowl just a couple of years after being fired by the Tennessee Titans. We've seen all the memes that the Patriots have won more games since right before Christmas, or they've won as many games since right before Christmas as the Titans have won since firing Mike Vrabel. I've seen all the memes. We know how you feel. But I'm looking forward to this matchup, Parker. As we talked about earlier, this is, based on preseason Super Bowl betting odds, the unlikeliest Super Bowl in recorded history. The Patriots, 80-1 odds to win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season. The Seahawks, 60-1 odds. The combined odds, 4,800-1, which makes this the unlikeliest Super Bowl matchup ever, overtaking the Rams versus the Titans in 1999. The Rams were 150-1 odds in the preseason. The Titans 30-1 odds, combined odds of 4,500-1. So I love that aspect of this matchup. I know it's a rematch. It happened about 10 years ago. That was a great game, of course, ending with Malcolm Butler's interception at the 1-yard line to secure a win for the Patriots. But the fact that we have two teams that missed the playoffs last season, that had some of the longest odds to even win the Super Bowl this season, being in the actual game, sign me up.
And it's great for the fan because the probably the average fan had no idea how this playoff was going to play out. Heck, I didn't even know. I had no idea going into this thing, because you still have that aspect of, well, Josh Allen is still there, and there's no Lamar, there's no Mahomes, there's no Burrow. He can make a run, and he ended up, winning a game and then losing to the Denver Broncos. So it's been so unpredictable, but every game it feels like has been within one possession and really tight down to the wire. So it's really been great for the fan more than anything else.
Sam Darnold has been receiving his flowers all day because the one thing that was missing from his resume was postseason success. And last season, Sam Darnold did not play well in two huge games for the Vikings. The winner-take-all game in the NFC North at the end of the regular season against the Lions, and then facing the Rams in the first round of the playoffs. He was just under siege that entire game. So all season long, as Sam Darnold continued to rack up wins for the Seahawks, it was, yeah, but wait until the games get tougher. Yeah, well, wait until the playoffs. And I thought he exercised a lot of those so-called demons yesterday. An outstanding performance for Darnold against the Rams. The cherry on top, of course, would be winning the Super Bowl. But can Sam Darnold actually do this, Parker? Can he put the Seahawks over the top?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt. They're favored for a reason. And the best part about it is I don't think Sam Darnold has to go and, play supernatural or anything like that in the Super Bowl because he has one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best. So if you can rattle Drake May early, you may not even have to put up a whole lot of points in order to beat the Patriots. I still think it'll be a great football game, but that's the great part about Sam Darnold is we've seen the growth where in crunch time, he's been able to make the plays when needed. But at the same time, too, against the 49ers, who were a really good football team, but they were also extremely banged up throughout the year, had a lot of key players missing that he didn't have to do a whole lot. In fact, all they had to do was return the opening kickoff of the game, and boom, there's your ball game. So that should be the encouraging part for Sam Darnold in all of this.
What is the key weakness for the Seahawks that the Patriots can exploit in the Super Bowl?
I think I'm still, and I thought this might show up in the last game, and it actually didn't, and I was proven wrong. I thought the loss of Zach Charbonnet in the running back room would alter, and I didn't know how much, but I thought it would alter the play action game because if you have a good run game, you can thrive off of play action, which is what Sam Darnold is very good at. They still put up a lot of points, and they beat the LA Rams. So Kenneth Walker was outstanding. I wonder if that is going to show up in the Super Bowl. And I wonder if the Patriots are able to kind of contain Kenneth Walker, what that would do to Sam Darnold to force him to shoulder the load. So that's kind of my early thoughts. And I'm going to do more research kind of leading up to the Super Bowl, but that's kind of where my head's at.
The other thing that the Seattle Seahawks do have to be concerned about is turnovers. It didn't bite them yesterday, but Sam Darnold is prone to turning over the football. The Patriots have had several takeaways, 8 takeaways in 3 postseason games against the Chargers, Texans, and Broncos. So although Sam Darnold was not rattled in the face of pressure yesterday, that was a big point in the game yesterday. The Rams had been Darnold's kryptonite. He struggled mightily when pressured against the Rams, but yesterday he stood in the face of that pressure and delivered some very key plays. So I'm wondering if maybe the turnover issue is behind him, but history suggests that the Patriots can take advantage there.
Yeah, and we still got to see, how that plays out. In their first 2 regular season matchups versus the Rams, Sam Darnold had 6 interceptions. In their first matchup, he had 4. Second game, he had 2. You remember that electric Thursday night game that ended up going to overtime was a shootout. And then in this NFC Championship game, he had 0. So we've seen him each time he's played the Rams just continue to get better and better and better. And really throughout the postseason, you can say the same thing. Every game, he's gotten a little bit better and a little bit better. So I think that's the growth that we're seeing from Sam Darnold. Now, I'd imagine if I'm the Patriots, I'm throwing the kitchen sink at Sam Darnold. I'm sure that they're, just waiting. Like, is this really how Sam Darnold is going to play throughout the entire postseason? I'm sure that's in the back of their minds. So I bet that they're going to throw the kitchen sink at him, and we'll just have to see how he responds.
Brandon actually has Sam Darnold's numbers under pressure yesterday.
Yes, and this is according to Next Gen Stats. Sam Darnold completed 5 of 11 passes under pressure for 102 yards and a career high 3 touchdowns as well. So you mentioned, Adam, him struggling a little bit against the Rams, especially under pressure, which that's been a common criticism of Sam Darnold. We all remember the I'm seeing ghosts out there comment from when he was with the Jets. That pressure did not phase him whatsoever. And I think that might have been the most impressive part about that yesterday from him.
615-737-1025. One texter here has his list of Titans offensive coordinators. We'll go through them because he lays out some interesting points. We'll see if Parker agrees. 615-737-1025. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick 1025, The Game, Parker Kelly, and Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick sent me a video from the tarmac where the Predators landed in Boston. They take on the Bruins tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. pregame right here on 1025 The Game. And it's a blizzard in Boston. So I don't know how they got up there. Flights are being canceled all over the place. That's why it pays to fly private. But the Predators have safely landed in Boston. Willie Donick expected to join the program tomorrow. Just a 2-hour edition of DVD tomorrow from 3 to 5 because of the Predators game against the Bruins. A 6 p.m. Central puck drop. Parker, I did get a kick out of this during the break. I don't know how I didn't see this before. But Diego Pavia's Senior Bowl measurements are in. He was listed at 6'0" and 207 pounds by Vanderbilt this season. His official Senior Bowl measurement, 5'9" and 7/8, 198 pounds.
That's not surprising because I know when I was in college, they used to take our measurements, with our cleats on and fully padded so that they could get the maximum measurement. So I guess that's the case with Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt.
I mean, look, my license says I'm 6'0". I'm probably 5'11" and 3/4. You round up any way you can, but going from
That's right.
5'9" and 7/8 to 6 foot, that's a little too much of a roundup. I am curious what Diego Pavia's NFL prospects are going to be. Do you think a team takes a shot on Pavia in the later rounds of the NFL draft?
Sure. I absolutely see him being a day 3 guy. I do think he'll get drafted probably between the 5 to 7, if I had to guess. But I'm absolutely taking a chance on him with the understanding that if nothing else, he can galvanize my locker room because he's a leader and guys want to play for him and he can get them fired up. So that's not the worst case scenario to have with the late round pick. If you don't get anything out of him on the football field, at least he can galvanize the locker room.
I wondered if Pavia could play a Taysom Hill-like role for an NFL team. Now, Taysom Hill has more of a traditional quarterback's build, 6'2", 221 pounds, at least according to ESPN. And as we just said, these teams tend to exaggerate these measurements. But do you think Pavia could play a role for his team similarly to the role that Taysom Hill plays for the Saints?
I mean, there will be ways to use him, but the difference between him and Taysom Hill is Taysom Hill, I believe, ran what 4.4 40, so he's very quick and a lot bigger, a lot stronger. Diego Pavia certainly has some of those, playmaking abilities where you could use him maybe as a Swiss Army knife. I don't know how successful it would be if it would work to the extent that it's worked with Taysom Hill. You could try, but that's probably what I would say.
So we've all been stuck at home for the past few days. I was able to venture out today. I jumped in my car today for the first time since coming home from the show on Friday, and I was getting a bit stir crazy. Parker, you're doing the show remotely from home as well. You know what? Let's put the sports to the side for just a second. How did everybody pass the time being stuck in the house this weekend? Now, Parker, correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have any children, correct?
No children as of right now.
Okay. See, that might be a blessing for being snowed in. Fortunately for my wife and I, our son wasn't born until after COVID. He was born in August of 2021. I can't imagine what it was like to have a child during COVID. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know. But what did you do to pass the time and not drive yourself nuts this weekend?
Well, certainly, football season was a very busy time, so I got behind on a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies that I haven't seen, and being cooped up in the house when you don't have kids and it's just you and your significant other, and you get a lot of time to do that. So that's really what we did. We had no problem being couch potatoes this weekend, just because it's been so go 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 with her work, and I'm driving around Nashville with 1025 doing the George Plaster show, so we had no issue being couch potatoes this weekend.
Brandon, how did you pass the time this weekend?
A lot of YouTube. I just kind of sat, relaxed, watched a lot of different YouTube videos, some sports, some food-based things, even discovered a few new channels that I actually enjoyed. So it can be difficult when you are stuck and you're kind of trapped because a lot of it feels mental to where typically if you want to be able to stay home, at least you have the option to go out. But in this situation, you kind of can't. But again, just making the most of it and just trying to take advantage of the relaxation. You're being forced to sit at home, and sometimes it's a good thing, even though the circumstances aren't ideal.
Yes, we're so busy in our lives, not the three of us, but everybody. You don't take a moment to take a breath. And it was nice to spend some time at home with my family. And I was nervous as hell that the power was going to go out. And my son, not really understanding, he's 4, he's about to be 4.5, not really understanding how electricity works. I was trying to explain it to him just in case the power went out. I was like, all right, buddy, here's what happens if the power goes out. And then he was sort of going one by one. He's like, so if the power goes out, the TV won't work and the refrigerator won't work and the lights won't work and everything won't work. I'm like, yes, everything that needs electricity won't work. And then he just started asking through the course of the day, is the power going out yet? Is the power going out yet? So fortunately that didn't happen. We were one of the lucky ones. We did not lose power over the weekend again. I don't know how the hell that didn't happen as I was driving today to drop off my son actually so that I could come here. It's the first time I went up my street in a few days, and I live at the end of a street at a dead end. So I was going up the hill, and at the top of the hill, there was a big tree branch just resting on a power line that was sagging close to the ground. I was afraid I was going to clip the tree branch as I drove under it. I'm like, how did this not knock out all of the power? But, I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate that that didn't happen. My son is is in charge of the television, so I had to like go into another room to watch the football games yesterday. But then he actually did take an interest in the football game. He was getting really frustrated that neither of the teams were scoring. Like he didn't like that the score at the bottom of the screen wasn't changing. He's like, who's gonna score? Who's gonna score? And
Hey, that's a young offensive mind developing right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So
that's uh his mom won't his mom is not gonna let him play football. So he's gonna have to figure out something else. But he actually asked me today who won the football game, which is the first time he's ever asked me what the
there we
score of a
go.
game was. So I was proud of him. And maybe one day you'll have that feeling too, Parker.
Yeah, hopefully. Adam, I need to tell you this because my wife is a native Chicagoan. And when I went up there for college, and that's where we were fortunate enough to meet, I told her, I'm like, hey, in Tennessee, when we get a threat of snow, people raid the grocery stores. Everyone's got to get their milk sandwiches. There's no toilet paper, there's no anything. And schools are out for weeks. So, and she didn't believe me. And sure enough, when we moved down here and got married, she got to witness it firsthand because she was in charge of going grocery shopping for us right before the storm hit. There was no chicken breast, there was no onions, there was no produce, no bananas, no milk, no bread, no toilet paper. So she got to experience it firsthand. She didn't believe me at first.
Yeah, it is quite something to see how people around here react to storms like the one we had over the weekend. Even storms that are not that were not expected to be as severe as the one we just had. Even if it's just like, oh, there might be like 4 to 6 inches of snow this weekend, and then you can't find anything in the store. I made sure the number one thing I made sure to do was I had to make sure I had to buy all of my son's favorite snacks. I had to buy extras of them because he just goes through them so quickly. And I did not want to have to deal with the potential meltdown of my son not being able to get his favorite kind of yogurt or his favorite kind of cracker or whatever because he ate them all and I did not buy spares. So we came home late last week with all of his favorite snacks. So we're not going to run out anytime soon. But that's the key for kids. You got to make sure they've got their snacks. And I've been eating his snacks because we know we've eaten all of the grown-up food in the house. So we've just been eating all of his snacks. So
I'm taking a mental note because as a future parent, that's something that I'm going to need to know. But yeah, we were fortunate enough to have plenty of pretzels, Cheez-Its, the essentials, right? If you're going to go through a winter storm. And it was a lot worse than I was expecting, but we were very thankful that we didn't lose power. So,
Yes, the Nashville Electric Service, the latest update as I pull here, 152,201 customers are still without power in Middle Tennessee. Hopefully that's not you, but if it is, please stay warm, please stay safe. It is expected to get frigid this evening, dangerous cold tonight. So just be sure to bundle up if you do not have power or heat, or if you can find a place to go. There are warming shelters throughout the region if you need a place to go. Because although the storm is over, the precipitation is gone. You do need to make sure that you stay warm. It's really dangerous out there how cold it is. 615-737-1025. We're wrapping up the show in a lighthearted way. You tell us how you survived the weekend stuck at home. Let us know you're doing okay. 615-737-1025. Parker Kelly, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. A big thanks to Parker Kelly and Brandon Bigsby for hanging out with me today. Willie Donick in Boston with the Predators, who take on the Bruins tomorrow, a 6 p.m. Central puck drop, 5 p.m. pregame, right here on 1025 The Game. Willie Donick expected to join me tomorrow for most of the show. Barry Trotz expected to join us as well. He usually joins us at 5 o'clock on Tuesdays, expecting him to join us around 4 o'clock tomorrow for our weekly chat with Barry Trotz. The Predators dropped a tough one on Saturday at home against the Utah Mammoth, a 5-2 loss to the Mammoth on Saturday afternoon at Bridgestone Arena. The Predators are 3 points out of the final playoff spot in the Western Conference, which is currently held by the San Jose Sharks. So the Predators, a 3-game road trip this week. Boston on Tuesday, New Jersey on Thursday, the New York Islanders on Saturday, before returning home next Monday to take on the St. Louis Blues. We'll find out about Derek Mason tomorrow. Derek Mason is okay. I've been checking in on him. He is okay. But he is approaching 36 hours without power at home. He was unable to make it to the studio today because of the roads in his neighborhood. So we're thinking of you, Derek. I know you're doing okay, but hopefully we'll see you soon. It's really tough out there. Now, if you look at right outside of our studio, we're on Murfreesboro Pike. That road looks good comparatively. I mean, there's still ice on the road, but it's passable. The interstates look good. I took Briley Parkway here past Opry Mills, all of that. That looked good. A couple of tough spots, but mostly clear. But it's those side roads and back roads. You're in Mount Juliet, right, Parker?
Yes, I am.
What are the roads like in Mount Juliet right now?
When I woke up this morning, they were pretty rough. They have gotten a little bit better. Just lots of ice. They were a little slower to salt the roads over here, and there are a lot of hills. That's the dangerous part, about Mount Juliet is you're a little further away from the city. There's a lot more hills, a lot more back roads, a lot more curves. So certainly have to be careful. I'm gonna have to be careful getting out of here tomorrow.
And Brandon, you're in West Nashville, correct?
Yes, West Nashville.
What was the situation like there when you left today?
It was passable. The roads were passable. Again, really the biggest thing was just really watching for the side streets. I was able to kind of avoid a lot of the side streets and go through Charlotte and then onto the interstate off of Briley. But a lot of it really is just kind of making sure that you know what you're getting into, because the side streets are where it can be a lot more touch and go, it feels like. But the main roads and most of the interstates were pretty solid. I actually was pleasantly surprised with how manageable it felt on the way over here. So obviously not the same for everyone, but it definitely does help soften the blow at least a tad.
If you're lucky enough to live near a major road, that is helpful. I live in East Nashville, right near the intersections of Gallatin and Trinity. So it's relatively easy for me to get to a major road. So once I left my street and was able to get onto Trinity to get here, it was mostly smooth sailing. But frankly, if you do not have to be anywhere, don't go anywhere. I know that I believe metro schools are already closed for tomorrow. I would be shocked if school is in session at all this week. My son's school already canceled for tomorrow, and I am preparing for him to be home all week, which sounds pleasant in some ways, and will make sure that I don't get anything done for the rest of the week. My son wanted to go outside this morning and just crack ice because we did that yesterday. We were cleaning off our cars and stuff like that. So he wanted to knock all the icicles off of my car. He doesn't care how cold it is out there. He learned about frostbite today. Not that he got frostbite, but I tried to convince him to go inside by telling him he could get frostbite if he stayed outside too long, which seemed to work. So sometimes you have to manipulate your children. There's a piece of parenting advice straight from the source.
Cut that, Brandon. Cut that.
Well, I mean, look, you'll learn one day. Other parents out there, sometimes bribery sometimes manipulation, sometimes bribery. You just have to do it. You have to get through it in some way. You got to move on. You got to avoid the meltdowns. You do what you got to do. It's not what they're going to tell you in any parenting book, but come on, parenting books are so overrated. I read that stuff before my son was born. I'm not sure how much of it I actually retained. So take it from me. I'm not the world's greatest dad. I mean, I've raised a wonderful son, but I could always still learn something else. So back to sports. Parker, Robert Saleh introduced to the media on Thursday afternoon. It was supposed to be Wednesday. It was pushed back a day. We're all on pins and needles waiting to hear from Robert Saleh. You did touch on this earlier, but what are you expecting? Which questions are you expecting to be asked of Robert Saleh? What are the most pressing questions that you think he will get when he finally talks to reporters on Thursday?
Well, apart from the Cam Ward stuff, I'm sure that is going to dominate the conversation. I'm also interested to see what he's asked about, the upcoming draft and who he might take, because I have a pretty good indication on who I feel would fit under a Robert Saleh led defense. And I've kind of narrowed down the candidates in my mind of, okay, if the Titans are going to stick at 4, who are the pool of candidates that they might take from, just given off of what Robert Saleh has run in New York and at other places in San Francisco. So I'm sure that at some point is going to come up. It might be later in the conversation, but I'm sure people are going to want to know, like, okay, you're a defensive guy. Does that mean you're going to take a defensive prospect, or are you going to lean offense? I'm sure that's going to come up at some point.
So who is the player you think they're going to draft based on your intel?
I think it's going to be one of 3: Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain, or David Bailey from Texas Tech. I think Arvell Reese probably has the higher chance of being drafted before any of those guys. So if I'm the Titans right now, I'm really kind of infatuated with Ruben Bain. I think that he would fit very well. He plays very similarly to Jeffrey Simmons. So that's a guy that's had a lot of success here. So I think it's going to be one of those 3 guys.
Okay, which one would you like if it were up to you?
Ruben Bain. I've been following Ruben Bain really his entire career at Miami, and I know that he's going to get knocked because of his short arms and his small hand size, and I'm going to follow up with that. Did you watch the college football playoff? Because he absolutely dominated despite having these quote unquote short arms, small hands. If you can play football, I don't care how big your hands are. I don't care how big your arms are. If you can play, you can play. And that dude can play.
Yes, I heard all about the short arms, and I understand it's a part of the game. I mean, we just read Diego Pavia's measurements from the what was that, the Senior Bowl, but I always think it's funny when I'm listening to other men critique the hand sizes of other men. Like, I know that it's part of the job. I understand it's part of the process, but short arms, small hands, whatever. I'm just like, I get it, but it's also a little weird. So that's just my opinion. I don't know.
When you present it like that, yeah, that's very weird.
So now that we only have one football game left this football season, of course, the Super Bowl, Patriots versus Seahawks, set for February 8th. So we don't have any more football for the next 2 weeks. How are you possibly going to pass the time, Parker Kelly?
Well, tonight, I know this is probably going to hit close to home for you. Duke has a pretty big basketball game, if I recall, against Louisville.
Tip off at 6.
That's something to watch. And then Kansas or not Kansas, it's Arizona and BYU.
Yes.
So
Big Monday doubleheader. Yes.
There's plenty of great college basketball to watch, and we're getting close to February, and then before you know it, March will be here, and we all know what March means.
Do you have a rooting interest in college basketball?
I'm a Tennessee fan, and I was very glued to the TV on Saturday night for a couple of reasons, and I was very happy with the result.
Yes, Tennessee beating Alabama on the road after Charles Bediako played 25 minutes for the Crimson Tide after all of the stuff about his eligibility.
I'm going to try, because I went on a tangent already on Next Man Up about this, but I'm going to try not to get going again, but that type of stuff just can't happen.
We've
And I'm
got
very
time. You can go
happy.
again if you'd like.
What I really think, and I hate to use this word, but I really think that we're going to get to the point where Congress is going to have to step in because that's what the NCAA is called for. Because they can't go to court and get a win. They always get sued, taken to court, and they lose. So at some point, either I see the conferences governing themselves or government steps in and helps the NCAA enforce their rules because the way that it's going right now, the way that it's trending, and this is just a shorter answer, it's not sustainable.
Brandon, you said you had some news on that front.
Yes, I do. Parker, be prepared to get yourself a little riled up again. It has been confirmed that Charles Bediako's restraining order has been extended for 10 days because the court cannot meet in Tuscaloosa, presumably because of the winter storm that's going on. However, it does mean that Charles Bediako can play for the Crimson Tide, at least for the next 10 days. So prepare yourself.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, Brandon, you just raised my blood pressure a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, well, actually, I would like to get your thoughts on this. A story that it's along similar lines. Speaking of Duke, their lawsuit involving their quarterback Darian Mensah in an attempt to prevent him from transferring. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really tough situation because I understand what Duke is trying to do. You know, it's Duke. You know, you're going to have smart lawyers in your corner to be able to go to war for you, but at the same time, too, if you're a teammate of Darian Mensah's at Duke, if you're Manny Diaz, would you really want to play with that guy that tried to leave? And I understand why they're doing it because he did sign a contract. So they're paying him. The understanding was that he would get paid $8 million over 2 years. So $4 million a year. So that was the mutual understanding. And the worst part is when you come out and say, hey, I'm going to be returning to school here next year. Oh, but at the 11th hour, I'm deciding that I'm going to enter the transfer portal and try to go to Miami despite signing my contract. Again, I get why they're doing it, but at the same time, I would not want to play for a guy that just tried to leave my football team.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Duke is trying to do. If we make a commitment to you and you make a commitment to us, you need to honor that commitment. But that's not what's happening in college sports. It's basically free agency. I'm not as riled up about it as my usual co-hosts are, but I understand the situation. And it will be fascinating to watch how it unfolds with Duke and Darian Mensah, who is reportedly going to Miami to replace Carson Beck, who replaced Cam Ward. So Miami willing to open the checkbook for their quarterbacks. Once again, although the weather has improved, the roads can still be treacherous. The major roads seem okay. A lot of cars going back and forth on Murfreesboro Pike right behind me at the moment. But just be careful if you are out this evening. Just take it slow. I've already seen a major wreck today on Murfreesboro Pike. I saw a car turned upside down. That's never a good thing. So take it slow. I also saw that picture of the semi that knocked over a sign on the interstate. So please be careful. Take it slow. If you do not have to be out, do not be out. Stay at home. Stay warm if you have power. If you don't have power, do what you need to do to stay warm. It's going to get awful, awful cold this evening. So stay warm, stay safe. We will continue to provide updates for you here on 102.5 The Game. So please listen to our stations if you need any assistance. We will be providing any and all updates that we have. I want to thank Parker Kelly and Brandon Bigsby for sitting in with me today. Derek Mason, Willie Dondick, David Janes out today. Willie Dondick expected to join me tomorrow for at least a portion of the 2-hour program. We'll see about Derek Mason and David Janes. David worked basically 2 straight days and never left the station. So we want to thank him for all of that. But that will do it for us today, Parker. Again, thank you so much for pulling double duty. 6 hours of Parker Kelly on 102.5 The Game. Stay safe, stay warm, be neighborly. On behalf of Derek Mason, be loved, love on your people. Again, be safe, be warm. We will talk to you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Peace.